today we have with us, and you know what? I'm not even going to attempt to categorize our next honored guest many talents, but I will showcase some of his most recent uh, achievements. We have with us today recipient of the 2019 Best Indie Book Award, shortlisted for the 2020 Shelf Unbound Best Independent Book Award, 2020 and 2022's recipient of the Literary Titan Award, author, poet, spoken word artist, and photographer Fernando Rover Jr. with us in the power plant today. How you living, brother?
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. I'm really, really honored and excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
And we are honored to have you. So we're going to go ahead and get plugged in. So we've been charged with two things. One, the discovery of our gift, and two, the responsibility to share that gift with the world. And right now, there's somebody who's buried underneath the weight of a false narrative that they believe about themselves. And they're going to see this and they're going to say, I can relate to his story because he's from where I'm at. And I'm not talking about a geographical location, I'm talking about a mindset and a set of circumstances. And they're going to say, you know, he successfully navigated his way out of a place that I can't see myself getting out of. So, Fernando Rover Jr., this is your hour to amp the people up with the power of your story. Let's electrify them.
All right.
Question number one. Knowing what you know now, what would you tell the 18-year-old version of yourself? And if you would be so kind as to give us a picture of what was going on in that young man's life.
Sure. I would say a lot of things to my 18-year-old self. I think at 18 years old, you're full of so much wonder and so much energy, and you're just waiting to get out into the real world. And you really are you really don't really know what's going to happen, and so you just kind of have this positive outlook. Not that that's a bad thing, but you just don't know any better. And for me, that summed it up great. But to really paint a picture of how that changed for me, um, when I was 18 was the same year that Trayvon Martin was killed, and we were the same age. We
Wow.
were the same age, and we had a lot of similarities between each other. Like, he was visiting his, so he had a stepmother and a father. My dad was remarried, and I would occasionally visit him and his wife and things like that. And growing up where I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood as well, and I would walk to the store. I mean, what kid doesn't do that in their neighborhood? Walk to their
Right.
neighborhood convenience store at night or whatever. You know, um, and I just remember thinking like, oh my gosh, that could have been me. And
Right.
and I think the not so much the situation at hand, what was going on, but just the whole discussion of what was going on around
Right.
his race and what that meant, and just how they were quick to vilify him as a criminal at such a young age, at 18 years old.
Wow.
And that was a big eye opener for me at that age, because again, like I mentioned before, you have such a rose colored outlook of the world at that age, because I mean, you're 18. I mean, you
Right.
really haven't had any experience, or if you have had experience, it's a very minimal, limited experience to change your perception otherwise, especially me. Um, so that I would tell him something that was just recently told to me when I went to a conference, actually, with a group of coworkers, and I would say, unfortunately, the world is not going to see you the way you see yourself. The world's not going to see the value or the worth that you have, and you're going to have to fight really, really hard in order to be seen in that way because there's so many chips stacked against you. You know, you are a boy of color, a man of color, and the world already has this idea of who you are before you even walk in the room.
Mm,
And you know, it's unfair and it's not right. And yes, you have every right to feel like that, but you can't let it deter you from your dreams. You
come on
can't
now.
let it define you and what your
Yeah.
future is going to be, and you can't just let it get to you. You know, and it's going to be, it's not just going to be a one-time deal. There's going to be moments as you get older, as you progress and go through college. You know, because I went to a predominantly white institution. You know, I was the only African American English major and history major, and I was very much in the vein of pro-blackness, and that was at times told to me that that was a bad thing or that was intimidating, and I,
Yeah.
being young and confused, like how is it a bad thing? But you really can't let that be. You can't let others deter you. Like, you know, you might be seen as a threat to some people, but you just
Right.
have to lean into that and not let yourself be disillusioned by, you know, not being accepted or not being liked or not being invited. You know, sometimes you have to be the outcast or be the outsider. And you know, so I would tell him to just embrace who he is. I would tell him
Mm,
that, again, the world's not going to like you. The world's going to see the value that you see in yourself. So it's up to you to remember that and to remind yourself when it gets hard, and to never give up. Just to be as simple as I could put it, just never give up.
that's beautiful. I hope y'all are listening. Some very, very key points that he just said about encouraging and reminding yourself
Yeah.
of the value that you have in spite of no one else seeing it at the time.
Yep.
So, can you tell us the story of how you discovered the gift that lives inside you?
um, I I've always had an active imagination.
Okay.
I remember there was a moment when I was 5 years old, and I would, you know, during kindergarten, they would have, you know, story time, or they would have, you know, creative writing time. And at this particular point in my life, I had a really, really bad speech impediment. I had a
Okay.
really, really bad stutter. And it still comes out from time to time, but it was really, really, really bad at the time. And, you know, I was very, I couldn't really communicate in the way that I wanted to. And so I would kind of be a little rambunctious, and, you know, I kind of would feel a little insecure because I couldn't like speak, or I felt like nobody was listening to me.
Right.
Um, but for some odd reason, like I couldn't read, like I read below reading level. I
Uh-huh.
was never good at math, but for some
Okay.
reason, I was good at writing. I was good at creativity. And
Yeah.
I noticed that from a really early age, and I latched onto that. That was a point of comfort for me because I discovered journaling really early and discovered that, you know, in a time where I maybe didn't make sense of or didn't feel like I fit into the broader world or the broader narrative that I was born into or that I was living in, I could kind of go into myself and go into my journal and create my own world, my own narrative. And
Wow.
even if it didn't make sense to anybody else, it made sense to me, and that's all that mattered. So
Yeah.
that was really early. I remember that. And then I remember as time went on, again, I really enjoyed journaling. I slowly but surely began to read better and read on level. And I was able to communicate better. My stuttering kind of slowly but surely went away. I mean, again, it still comes out every time and time again, but it was salvageable, and I was able to kind of communicate with people again. Um, and I think too, my storytelling ability was definitely nurtured by my family. Coming from, I think every African American family has a rich background. I think
Yeah.
it's in our it's in our it's in our DNA and in our blood to pass down stories of like
Yeah.
everyday occurrences to children and grandchildren. And I remember, being young and listening to like my grandparents and my parents and my aunts and cousins talk about, what was it like growing up, 50 years ago or 20 years before I was born, and just being really mesmerized by that and wanting to kind of compartmentalize that and capture that essence and put it somewhere.
Yeah.
Um, so I remember it was around age 5, and then as I got into my preteen years, um, I really started to see that, okay, I think I may have something here, because when I was 10, we had to do this standardized test called the tax test,
Oh,
and
okay.
at fourth grade, you did the reading. There was a reading section,
Uh-huh.
and a math section, and a writing section.
Okay.
And again, math did I passed, right? I mean, I was math wasn't my strong suit. Reading was okay, but writing, I actually scored. There were on the grading scale, the highest you can score was a 4, which
Okay.
you needed a 3 to pass. And I think I was one of maybe 2 or 3 students in my class to score a 4, which
Come on
was
now.
was a big deal to me and to my teacher. And so that was kind of that was a sign that was important, because it showed that, okay, I don't just have the passion or like the interest, I actually have the aptitude.
There you
So
go.
there's a little bit of a balance here, that, okay, like I actually like this, but hey, I'm actually good at it too. So what else can we do with this? And so I just continued to journal, continue to write, continue to read, and I applaud teachers who can see potential in students that they can't see in themselves. It takes a
Right.
really important teacher to want to do that, because when it comes to these, being placed into like honors courses and AP courses, you can say that you want to all you want, but if somebody doesn't see it and somebody doesn't
Right.
back you up on it, it's like you're kind of on your own. And so I appreciate that my sixth grade English teacher, she saw something in me, and she recommended me for honors English, and I was, I was kind of surprised by that, because there weren't a lot of kids that looked like me in honors English, and
Right.
so that kind of was the beginning of that was a beginning for me, because I was able to actually read and write on a new level. Because in honors classes, you're reading, very advanced literature, and you're being encouraged to deeper as a writer. And so that was really big for me. And then going into high school, it was when I discovered my particularly my love for African American literature. I think I loved it all my life, but I really decided that's what I wanted to do, and I wanted to read in high school. So I got into reading Toni Morrison. I got into reading Langston
Yeah.
Hughes. I got into reading um, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King,
Yeah.
and all these different people. And then of course 2012, when I was 18, Trayvon Martin happened, and you know um, that was a big deal too, because I remember going into college. We would I would I so I ended up majoring in English and history in
Okay.
college, but part of the curriculum was more of like the American literature and the American history, but like the Black history and the Black literature were electives. And so, but I was very happy though, because my advisors were adamant um, about advocating that I take these courses, and advocating that courses even exist. And even though, even though it wasn't a packed class with like 25 people, we still had rich conversations. And um, it was I would say that it taught me a lot about art and taught me a lot about storytelling, because from 2012 until 2016 was like the fever pitch of the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah.
It's like every day you couldn't turn on the television and not see an unarmed man or woman of color that was, shot by police,
Right.
protests, and I remember it was, having those conversations with other 19, 20-year olds, and especially in this day and age, because I think the era of, after Obama was voted in president, a lot of non-people of color, kind of entered this era of colorblindness, where this idea
Yeah.
that, oh, we aren't racist anymore because we have a black president, and which is not at all true. Um, but again, like the fact that I think they settled into that, it
Right.
sort of made some people uncomfortable to continue to talk about it. And so, I remember, oh my God, I remember this story as clear as day. I decided that this is random, but it makes
I
sense to me.
love it. Come on.
Um, I remember when I was in my senior year of college, I
Okay.
decided that I was going to run for homecoming court, which is a big deal because the me 4 years ago would have been like, no way. But there hadn't, but like, I went to a predominantly white institution, and there, I think, had been like one or two here or there, black homecoming king and queen. But there was a chance for, because a black female was running for homecoming queen, and I was running for homecoming king. So we thought, okay, if we put our heads together and work together, maybe we can get voted in, and like we could be the first black homecoming king and queen in the whole school's history. I mean, that was a big
Wow.
deal for me. Um, and I remember, so you have to you had to, of course, sign up, right? Sign up, and you had to, advertise yourself around campus and create posters and talk to people. And so I remember I created my flyer, and it was kente cloth in the background, and
Hey.
had the black power fist, and then it said, my slogan was, "Do the right thing, vote Fernando Rover for homecoming queen." Homecoming king.
Hey.
Now, in my mind, yeah, I mean, in my mind, like, it's like I didn't do that to stand out. I just did that because that's what I wanted to do. Like, I didn't do it
Right.
because, oh, I want to, show that I'm pro-black. No, I did it because that's who I am. That's always
Right.
who I've been. So cut to the day of the election, or the day that, so the election, like the results go in, and then you're announced at the game. And my family is there, and I have friends there, and professors are there, and it's a lot of people that are there at the game. And we get to the field, and I basically, what happens is, we're all announced, and I don't win homecoming king, but the young lady wins homecoming queen. Now, the great thing about it is that we all were friends, so there was no competition. And actually, that night, diversity still won, because the homecoming king was a person of Pacific Islander descent. So there
Oh,
was still
okay.
diversity. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, it wasn't really a
Yeah.
loss. And then again, we all were friends. Like, it wasn't that big of a deal. It wasn't like, oh, they lost. Like, we're not friends. No, it was not like that at all. It was not like that at all, because we all were friends. We all came up together, and it was, to me, looking back, it was still a testament of diversity. Diversity still won that night, which
That's
is
cool.
important. But what I learned after that was even more important. I remember I ran into a friend of mine, a white friend of mine, and uh, because of course, it sucked to have lost in front of a whole group of people.
Right.
It was not easy. It hurt. I'm sensitive. It was
Right.
hard,
Right.
and I was sad. Of course, I was sad. Of course, but I woke up the next day, and I felt good about myself, because I tried. And
There you
again,
go.
it was a surprise to me, because again, the me 4 years prior to that would have never thought about running for homecoming king, because that wasn't my thing, I thought. But I'm like, well, I'm
Right.
gonna make it my thing. And so this white friend of mine, female classmate of mine, she was like, "Hey, how are you doing? How are you feeling?" And I was like, "I'm good. I tried and I gave my all, and I feel good about what I did." And she was like, "That's great. I wanted to vote for you, but your posters kind of made me feel they kind of intimidated me a little bit. I kind of didn't feel like I feel like it was too intimidating. I didn't like it was kind of too intimidating to me." And I
Huh.
was like, "Okay." And she was like, "Well, and that's maybe why you didn't end up winning, because maybe you might have turned some people off with your posters and your flyers and all that." And I remember like sitting with that for like a few days. Like, what do you mean? Like, I don't. And then it finally clicked that, oh, so because my posters were too black, I might have intimidated my white classmates to not vote for me. You know, that's
Right.
that's the conclusion I got to, and that was a big lesson for me because it taught me that everybody else can be prideful of their background. Like Hispanics can be prideful of their background. Pacific Islanders, Filipinos, South Asian descent folks, even white people have their own, like who are Irish and German. They can
Right.
be proud of their backgrounds and their heritage, and it not be a big deal. But for us, it's seen as something different, and it's seen as something that is intimidating. And that that lesson for me was that changed everything for me, because I realized that no matter what I do, even if it's not, if I'm trying to be equal, or if I'm trying to be pro black, there's always going to be a or. I'm never going to have a chance to be just, me. It's always going to be looked at a different way. So I decided that day that, okay, well, fine. If my blackness intimidates you, then let it intimidate you. If my blackness makes you feel some type of way, then that's not on me. That's more it is about you. That's fine. So ever since then, I have just leaned into that, and I've
There you
just
go.
and everything I've done really since then, because I graduated from college that following semester. Actually, I did my senior thesis, so I did two. I did an English and history one on Black literature and Black history. I I started writing for this local publication. I wrote about black issues or issues of culture and of racial bias. So I've been really, ever since then, I've been really intentional on writing about black issues, and I haven't stopped since then. Not to say that I didn't do that beforehand, but that moment in particular made, like, it taught me that you know there's always going to be someone that doesn't like your work, or will use your blackness as an excuse to not like your work. And for me, it was like, well, okay, okay.
Exactly.
So
So, I
yeah.
mean, just to say that you just leaned into just being you. And the thing about that is, it's really not about those who take offense to it. It's about the fact that there's somebody out there that feels intimidated by the fact that they can't express
Oh
themselves.
yeah. Oh yeah.
And
Absolutely.
that in
Absolutely.
itself is a victory for you standing up. So okay, so is there a little more to that you can tell us? Because the very next question was is when did you discover that you had a responsibility to share that gift with the world, and how did you go about doing that?
Well, like I mentioned before, my education was formed by the Black Lives Matter movement, and I came up during a time where you know we've come so far, but we still have so much far to go. And I realized that so many powerful and so many well-known figures that have made that paved the way for black men and black women, like myself and my counterparts. They're starting to kind of die off. They've like John Lewis. You know what I mean? It's like
Right.
It's
Right.
and and it was just it just it made me realize that okay, like we like the baton is being passed. The torch is being passed. We can't drop it. We can't not take it.
Right.
We have to. We may not live the same time or era that they did, but the work is still needing to be done. And
Absolutely.
while it may seem like now more than ever, it's so much more harder and it's just so much more intense than it ever has been. You know, we can't we can't not do the work.
Correct.
Because we're we're all we have left. So that's really when I decided to, I realized that okay, I am a storyteller, I'm a writer, like I am exactly where James Baldwin was and Langston Hughes was and Toni Morrison was and Maya Angelou was in their day, where they're young and they're seeing the world around them and they're trying to make sense of it and they're trying to figure out okay, how can I use my gift to push the legacy of my people forward. And so it just I just it was a no brainer. It was a
Come
no
on.
brainer because and again I studied Black history. I
Right.
studied literature. I studied storytelling. I grew my parents. Instilled that in me from a young age. So it wasn't like I was completely like oblivious to it up until a certain age, and I didn't. And just because I'm not, out, marching in Washington doesn't mean my role in the movement is any less significant. Um,
I just want to get into this part and not to really interrupt, but just to like
Mhm.
everybody fights different.
yes.
Everybody's role in progression is different. It's
Mhm.
like I think of it like a clock. There's different parts that move and make the clock work.
Yes.
And every role and every function is different. So yes, there are some people that we don't want writing because that's not their thing. There's some people that we don't want doing certain things. We need you to be doing what you do, how you express yourself in the best light. Because something that you write could be the very thing that inspires somebody who is about to write a piece of legislation. Something that you write might inspire somebody who's about to give up, who maybe, you never know, incarcerated, and they read something that you wrote and it inspires them to lead a movement once they get out and inspire the nation. You never know, by the seed that you plant using your gift, you never know how far that's going to take
Yeah.
us to the next level. So, how did you make belief reality? Like you saw a vision in your mind of who it was you were growing into. How did you take that idea of that person that you saw that had no experience, that had, that was going through all the frustration? How did you make belief reality to become who you are?
I just tried.
Okay.
um, I, I I tried really hard and I failed miserably at times, and
Okay.
I just didn't give up. I just didn't give up because I felt like okay, this is what I want to do. This is what I've dreamed about doing. I'm not gonna. No one's gonna take that away from me, you know. And I just I realized early on, okay, I know where I want to go and I know where I want to be. I just have to have to write myself there. I have to, just write my own, like create a story and create my own narrative and just chart my own path and just go from there. I can't let anything deteriorate me, and especially as a writer and as an author, because you know when you think about being an author and being a writer and an artist, author. You write something, it gets discovered, you get asked to be, you get signed to a publishing company. They take you on and they publish you, and you're in bookstores, and it seems great and fun, and it's like the romantic the romantic part of the journey.
Right.
And it's like the iceberg metaphor. It's like, you see the on the top, like the books and the fame and the recognition, but at the bottom, you don't see all the rejection. You don't see the nights that you want to give up. You don't want to see, you don't see the how much you have to convince people that you know what you want to do, and that you're not, like, you actually are aware of what you want to do. Because we live in a time, well, not a time, but just a world where we're so immersed in capitalism that
Right.
artists, it's like there's no room for us. It's like, well, it's like we have to constantly prove how what we do is important. Even if it doesn't have a monetary value to it, it's still important. Um,
Right.
and that was early. And I remember, like, early on, that was really, really, really hard for me, because I had people telling me, you could do so much more with your degree. Like, what are you doing with this? Like, you're always gonna have to work. Like, what do and I'm just like, I mean, that's great that, people make this much money at this age, and all that, but that's not what I'm about. I've never been about that.
There you go.
And there's nothing wrong with that, but not everybody is motivated by money like that. And,
Correct.
and I wasn't, and I remember having a conversation with my advisor before I graduated, and she told me about, there's traditional publishing, which is what I explained before. You get signed by publishing house, and they pay for everything, and then they recoup what they pay through your sales. But then there's the self-publishing route, where it's all you. You are your own agent, your own marketer, your own writer, your own editor, your own publisher, and you're really pushing your content out there. And there's no guarantee it's going to land anywhere, but that's not the point, you know.
Right.
And for me, that sort of um, free landing or free happenstance that kind of was emphasized there was what I fell in love with, because at the end of the day, I have control over what my story is and how it's
Yeah.
being pushed and how it's being received, and that's really all I really cared about. I could, and I'm thankful that my education has afforded me, a job that actually does help, pay bills, and, does afford me, the freedom to pursue, my writing career without the pressure of actually making money from it. Because I'm able to make money and take care of myself through another position, but I can still, save here and there, and, and invest here and there in my work, you know, and that's okay. You know what I mean? So I hope that, artists and writers who are coming up either with me or behind me, I hope that they understand that, look, don't let anybody define what success means to you.
Come
You
on
know,
now.
don't let people talk you out of your dream because they don't have a dream, or they didn't pursue theirs. You know what I
That's
mean? So
it.
I learned early on, okay, I have to protect my dream. I can't
Come
let
on.
everybody in, so
Right.
I really had to learn that. I really, really did, because, again, when you're young and, you're optimistic like that, you want to believe that everybody supports you and everybody wants to see you shine, which is not true, and
Right.
it's really devastating when you do meet somebody and they show you that they don't want to see you win, or they talk doubt into you. And it's devastating. It really, really is. And then when you allow yourself to believe that, and then you talk yourself out of it, it's even more devastating, because, sure, they told you that, but you listened. You allowed them to define that moment for you. And so
Correct.
I learned this recently. This wasn't like years ago. I learned this recently. I can't allow fear of failure or fear of not not measuring up to this benchmark of success that was defined by somebody that doesn't even know me. You know,
Thank you.
define what I'm gonna do for the rest of my life. I really, really can't do that because I'm gonna be unhappy the rest of my life, and I have nobody to blame but me. So I really, really, really hope that artists and writers that are coming up behind me, and I really hope I can do everything I can in my power to show that and to be a sounding board for them, that don't listen to other people. Like, don't listen to
It's
people.
your example that you're
Yeah.
setting by your work. And I one of the things about me is when I speak to people, I ask them, where did that doubt come from? Where did that voice come from? Is that your voice, or is that the voice of somebody else?
Yeah.
Because you know what feels innately you.
Mhm.
And when you get in tune with yourself, you know that that voice, that idea, that doubt, that fear, that wasn't even you. That wasn't even your voice. So the
Yes.
fact that you're saying that is powerful, and the fact that you're out producing work that is beautiful and it's authentic, that is going to be the thing that sets the actually builds the bridge for someone else who is coming behind you. So with
I
that
hope
being
so.
said,
I hope so.
what would you like to share with the listeners, with those who are going to watch this, about what is on your horizon and what it is that you've got going on right now as an artist?
So I've written 3 books since 2019. Um, my first book, Labyrinth, was written and self-published. It was based on my travels. I got a chance to travel to Scotland my
Wow.
last summer after my senior year of college, and I got to go there. And it was very so. The book it touches on everything from faith and discovery and revelations and heritage and everything that's really about me, really. Um, and then during the pandemic, something big happened. I remember I had so many poems that I wrote for Labyrinth, and it was really, really hard deciding which ones go into the final product. And I had so many left over. And so during the pandemic, we had time and we had space and we had all this free time on our hands.
Right.
And I was going through my hard drive and going through my archive, my vault of poems that I wrote like maybe 2-3 years prior that I didn't know what to do with. I didn't want to like put in, I don't want to give them away. Basically,
Right.
I didn't want to put them in something and then not get something in return for them. So and that's what I love about self-publishing is that we have the freedom and the ability to literally publish something uh, in the moment, like literally literally type it up, edit it, and then submit it to Amazon for publication. And then boom, it's literally live on Amazon within 24 hours.
That's
That's
beautiful.
so awesome, right?
Yeah.
So, Sanctuary, which is like the sequel to Labyrinth, talks more about what that was. It was I think during the pandemic, I was, and especially other folks, we were seeking, safety from the world that was happening outside. And so a lot of the poems talk about that. And now in my third book, my recent book that I worked on I put together Sanctuary while working on this one, is Maverick. So Maverick is my third book, and it's really, it's something that has always been there, but I think it was in divine time that it would come out, as my third project. I couldn't publish it my first project because I had to go through the motions of going through the previous two to get
Right.
here. And then
Right.
too, the timing of it, it was inspired by the pandemic. It was inspired by the my hometown of San Antonio. I used the theme of gentrification as a metaphor to kind of show and display the internal and external effects of conformity, what it has on people and places and things like that. So I was also inspired by it was the first time I actually ventured into other modes of storytelling. So my all of my books have photography, have photographs and poems. So, I've always been someone that's a multifaceted storyteller. I feel like writing is one way we can tell stories, but through
Right.
photography and visual imagery, music, like there's so many modes of storytelling. And
Yeah.
Maverick was the first time I actually ventured into the film world. I created a short film component where I actually went around San Antonio and actually got footage of areas that were either gentrified or in the process of being gentrified. And I created this short film. I'm very much inspired by the indie film and the indie art film genre. One of my favorite writers and directors is Gordon Parks.
Yes.
He's the so we know him for Shaft, right? The original
Right.
Shaft. But prior to that, he was a photojournalist. So he took
Right.
pictures of, different parts of America, and he worked for, I think it was Newsweek or one of the well-known magazine publications at the time. And he shot in black and white. Black and whites were his thing, and so I really wanted to emulate that same style. So a lot of the photographs in Maverick are black and white, and the film component, the art film as I call it, is also in black and white as well. And it's an art film because it doesn't follow a linear narrative. It's very
Right.
much like the art, the poetry really leads the film, and that's what I like about art films is that you know what I about art in general is that there's no rules. It's like
Right.
do what feels right to you as the artist, and
Yeah.
let the art sort of lead you down where you want to go. And
There
so
you go.
Maverick really was that big leap for me. And right now I'm just reading and continuing to promote it. I'm doing something different this time. Kind of going back to our original talk about, not letting people, convince you not to do something. I have been toiling with the idea of doing like a virtual book tour, you know, and I remember like it was like maybe last year or like the end of like the fall of last year, probably about a year ago. I thought about it and I remember I thought about it and I was like, yeah, but no one's gonna take me seriously. Like, like it's not an actual tour where I'm going places. So like, why even try? And then a
I would
few
take you
months ago,
seriously.
right, right, no,
I
right,
take you seriously right now.
exactly, no, exactly. It's just funny how you think everybody when you're in this doubting mind frame, and then a few months ago, a few weeks ago actually, I was like, okay, it came back to me again, and I was okay, and to me, it's like if you think about things over and over again, that's a sign that okay, you have to do this because why do you keep coming back to it? You
That's
know what I
that
mean?
power right there.
Yeah. And so I was like, okay, it's like 8 o'clock at night. I have to get ready to go to sleep, and I have this idea to do a book tour, a virtual book tour, and I thought, okay, well, okay, let's marinate on it. So like let's logistically look at it. And I thought, well, I mean, everybody has a computer, everyone has a
Right.
phone.
Right.
You can do it through Zoom. You can the only charge because the only charge you can give is just say your ticket is to pay for an autographed book. That way
Hey.
people are invested already because they're going to tune in because they paid to tune in, but also they get something in return. They get a autographed book, and you are selling a copy.
That's
So
brilliant.
and then just have and following the metrics of a tour, have different dates and put them on like a little flyer, a little a little marketing thing, and just just promote them and just push them out the way you would do, you know, an in-person tour. And I thought to myself, yeah, but it just seems too easy. Or like, what if it doesn't work? Or what if nobody, supports, or, whatever. And then I finally said to myself out loud, I was like, well, why not? Why
There you
not? Why
go.
not? You know what? Why not? Who says who is saying that this can't work? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And so we're doing it. we're I
That's
have
awesome. That's the
yeah.
power right there.
Yeah. So for folks who are tuning in, I am doing a Maverick virtual book tour. If you follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Frame Reference Media, I've posted, e-flyers, and they're at the beginning of next week. I've created an Eventbrite page for the tour, and you can purchase tickets starting next week. And then yeah, there'll be, so we have a couple of dates in September. So it'll officially kick off in September. So we'll go
Okay.
from September all the way until March. And then hey, if it's going well from there, we'll go all the way until May. But yeah, I have a couple of dates here and there, and a couple of poems I'm gonna pull out, and really just kind of make it a really engaging environment and experience, because I thought to myself, okay, everybody has, and again, we're in this era where we're in the work smarter, not harder era. So it's like, why not do something over Zoom? If everybody
Right.
has a computer, everybody has a phone, and people still read, people still do things. It's just that, don't let, because the reason why I think there was so much doubt around it is that, book tours have kind of become like special to like the famous authors, right? Like the J.K. Rowlings and the James Pattersons and the Danielle Steeles of this day,
Right.
because they have the money, to back it up. You know what I mean?
That's right.
But that doesn't mean that self-published authors can't do it. You know what I mean?
Correct.
And even though there's no guarantee of a success, but generally in anything in life, there is no guarantee. That's why it's called work. That's why you try it.
Exactly. And back to
So
what you said in the first place. What is the measure of success?
right. Yeah.
What your
So
measure of success is differs from someone else's. And all that matters is that you put out the work that you saw in your mind. You create that thing, you put it out into the world. Just the fact that you did it alone is a success.
yes.
And your tribe, your group of people, the people who you are writing to, they will find you. All
Right.
you have to do is be willing to be found and give them
Yeah,
something to find.
exactly.
And you are doing that.
Yeah,
That is
put
amazing.
myself out there. Put myself out there to be found. You're absolutely right. You are 100% correct. And so, yeah, I was like, okay, I'm scared to do this. I'm nervous to do it, but you know what? I'm gonna do it. I want to do it. Like, I'm going to do this. I'm gonna have, because I've always wanted to do a virtual book tour. I've always wanted to do that because it's such a fun idea and fun phenomenon. And again, why not? Why not? And
Exactly.
so yeah, so that's the big thing. Like, so anyone who's tuning in, again, you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter at Frame Reference Media. And beginning of next week, the Eventbrite page will go up, and you can start purchasing your tickets. And again, when your ticket literally it includes, and it's a autographed copy of the book. So
And let me
it's
tell you, I've seen the book. I've held it in my hand. I've turned the pages. It is gorgeous. I am, as soon as I can, will be an owner of a copy of this beautiful book. You've literally asked our last question, which is, how can the online community find you? You've let them know. And also, I will be adding um, a link to everything that you just said. There'll be images of everything that you said so that they can find it. But thank you so much for your time and for
Thank you.
sharing with us. And again, for those out there who have a gift, I don't care what that gift is, hear what this young man is saying, more importantly, what he's doing. He takes the risk, he takes the chance, he puts himself out there, and when you do that, the reward will be the reward. The fact that you were brave enough to get out there in the first place and not allow something to stop you is the brilliance right there. But I'm telling y'all, this brother is deep. Get into what it is that he has, that he's saying, what he's selling, what he's offering. You will not be disappointed. But again, thank you so much for joining us. And everyone, remember to stay connected, support one another, because that's what this is all about.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Well, we will be signing off. And again, make believe reality, everybody. Until next time. To
Thank you so
change the
much.
narrative
Thank
in
you.
your life, take the next step. Invest in yourself and book a life strategy coaching session with me at www.beliefinteriordesign.com. Let's start the journey of making belief reality.